Welcome in, friends and future friends, to this special, I guess, 4th of July weekend episode of the Sports and the World podcast. I'm LaDarius. Hope all of you are well and safe out there. Lots to get to. Hope all of you have been well. It's been a while, but I thank you for your patience and take a little time out your day here on the 4th of July weekend. Like I said, lots to get to. I want to talk wrestling. Talk about the NBA. Uh, Especially, it's been a while since I talked about Caitlin Clark, my thoughts on that, and they all star voting. But let's start with the NBA. A lot of things happened, a lot of trades. So I want to jump right into it. The most recent trade we saw was the Celtics and the Sixers, as Jalen Brown is now a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. I have a lot of opinions. Well, not say a lot of opinions, but I hear people say, "Oh, this is one of the worst trades." I'm, I think it's bad for a similar reason with the Luka trade, but I think this particular trade is slightly worse, and I'll get to that. So, so now let's just get to it. Adding a little something different. Let's. I'm gonna show you some things here. Now, this is the trade that was made recently. We have Boston getting Paul George, a 2028 first and second round pick, first round in 2030, and a second round in 2030. And of course, the Sixers get Jalen Brown. Now, I want to compare this to the deal that was made between the Mavericks and the Lakers. And there's a point to all. I would like to think. So this was the deal made last offseason, where Dallas got Anthony Davis, Max Christie in the 2029 first rounder. Lakers got Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Marquise Morris. Now you're asking, well, what makes this trade different? Now the similarities is clear. You're trading a superstar and you're getting an older player and at least a draft pick. Now, at least with the Lakers, they got Luca and they got Maxi Kleber and they got Marquise Morris. And Dallas did get Max Christie, and they did get a younger player and they got a first round pick. But here's where my concern is over the last 2 seasons, Paul George, whether it's been suspension or injury, let's be clear, 78 games in his 2 seasons with the Sixers. Paul George, I believe, will be 36 by the time the NBA season, the next WNBA season gets underway later this year in October. Jalen Brown will be 29, 30, depending on when the NBA starts. So there's the age gap, similar to Luca, Anthony Davis. We look at Anthony Davis and Paul George, all stars, all NBA. So there's the similarity in what makes the trade bad because it just seems for some reason people wanted Jalen Brown out of Boston, and for the life of me, I cannot figure that out. Why? I it boggles my mind that you would run this guy out of town, given his resume, helped you win a championship, and you run him out of town. And I understand this is not about people love Jason Tatum, but the reality is it was just they wanted to run Jalen Brown down. And and I'll get to more about Jalen Brown and his legacy with the Celtics. But the fact of the matter is, this is what makes it look worse for Boston. You're getting a guy in Paul George. Like I said, he's gonna be 36, and it's interesting. But here's the potential one. This is where the point. If nothing changes, if no other moves are made, if nothing else happens, Boston's gonna have Derek White, Baylor Steierman, Paul George, Jason Tatum, and signing Mitchell Robinson, who's coming off a championship with the Knicks. Now go look at Philly. Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Jalen Brown, Dean Wade, who they picked up from Cleveland, and Joel Embiid. If if a slide had if this is like a tale of two cities, it literally is. But they have the same issue, but one it's for Paul George. 36. I hate to keep harping on that, and he's owed a lot of money. I think almost like $58 million, and he's going to be 36. So I question that a bit. But I look at the health, like if Joel Embiid, if his health, can you stay healthy? Philadelphia somehow went from a team that maybe looked like, ah man, they can make the playoffs, but they look like a legit contender to win the East. Now you can come at me in the comments, and I would totally get the anger and the vitriol, but understand just how seismic of a shift this trade was. Because first of all, I like the signing of Mitchell Robinson, and I'm like, if they would have had Mitchell Robinson and kept Jalen Brown, Boston, I'm like, I think we found a team to compete with the Knicks. But when you trade Jalen Brown, I simply no. And I'm gonna here's the thing with Jalen Brown, and this is the point that I want to talk about in his time with the Celtics. Now he's tenth all time in points in the history of the Boston Celtics. These numbers are all about he's in the top 10 in a lot of categories over the history of this storied franchise. Six triple double ties for the eighth most. Points per game, he averaged career 20 points. That was at eighth. 3-point field goal, third. You trade a guy, all NBA champion, NBA champion, and this is what makes I can make a case. This is what makes the deal worse. Because as great as Luca is, Luca hasn't quite got the championship on the resume at the time. You're trading a guy, and listen, don't get me clear. That Luca trade was bad because of Anthony Davis and the injury history. So like, oh, what did they get? I just said, yeah, they got a younger piece than Max Christie, and they got a draft. But this is what's worse. The only thing that listen, Philly said you want these picks, you can have them. And that interests me with Brad Stevens is that your team was not terrible. You know, my whole thing is that if the season started today, which lineup would you feel good about? And quite frankly, if 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 I'm a Sixers fan, I'm feeling rather good. I'm feeling rather good about this deal. I'm feeling pretty good about it. To be perfectly honest, I'm feeling really good because Max, you got Tyrese Maxey, BJS. Like there's veteran and youth experience. Dean Way was great for Cleveland. Um, the, to me, if Joel Embiid can be healthy, and does he necessarily listen? The days of gone of guys playing 82 games. Like there's load management, right, whatever you want to call it. But if you can get 70 games out of Joel, 65, 70, you don't need a whole 82. But with Paul George has played 78 games over the course of two seasons. 41 the previous season, 2 seasons ago, and he played 37 this season. That's what the concern is if I'm Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens is a smart guy, great executive. But when we're thinking about how this changed the East, it's a game changer. And we're talking about something else who's going to probably has the potential to change the way the East looks. We'll get to them shortly, but to kind of put a button on this, I want people to understand what makes this trade. This is the Lakers trade, and the Lakers just they gave up Anthony Davis, they gave up Max Christie, and they gave up a first round pick. They say, hey, you can have Luca for aging, injury prone forward, and a young guy, and a draft pick in a couple of years. The Lakers got Luca, Kleber, and Morris. To my recollection, I don't think Kleber and Morris are no longer the Lakers. Someone could correct me in the chat. But just something to think of. Before we go on, I see some people in here. I see John in here. Tribal Chief, acknowledge you. We're going to talk to wrestling, like I mentioned earlier. We're going to talk a little Roman Reigns. My bestie Rachel, LaDarius, how you doing? And her saying hi to John. And also, by the way, if you're not following Rachel on the Twitter, follow her on the Twitter. And like I said, I told her this. I told this to her on the face, through text, and anytime I say the impact she's had on the fantasy football community, uh, especially bringing in women into the fantasy football climate. I'm just glad to be a part of the universe that she is, and then that she's created, just to be a part of it, and the job she's done with them long, and she's done a phenomenal job. Like I said, just glad to be a just a like a like a little sliver of it, and she's absolutely amazing. Just wanted to slip that in. But to put a button on this, look at the trade. Um, if you're a Boston fan, I understand why this is a bad trade. Picks are great, but picks feel interchangeable to me based on different franchises. It's no different than in the NFL. The Rams don't care about picks. They're willing to. They did it again with Miles Garrett this offseason. They did it to get Trent McDuffie. Like they'll give up draft picks to get great play. Some franchises will do that. What puzzles me with Boston is like signing Mitchell Robinson was great. Keep Jalen Brown. I'm like, okay, we got a nice interior presence. We got Jalen Brown. We got Tatum. We're doing something. Front court looks good. Back court looks good. And then you trade Jalen Brown, who, by the way, in my opinion, didn't want to leave Boston. That's that's the thing. I don't think Luca wanted to leave Dallas. In a world where we live, where star players are demanding trade, these two all stars, multi-time all stars, wanted to stay with their franchise. Instead of building in Dallas, instead of building around Luca, we'll just trade Luca for Anthony Davis, a pick, and Max Christie. And it boggles the mind where they didn't want to go anywhere. They weren't demanding to leave. They just wanted, hey, can you build something around me to be a success? Because we're getting close, but I can't do this on my own. Because they kind of felt like Lionel Richie, and they needed to, like Commodore. They needed better. They needed like a supporting cast, and that's what they didn't have. And then you just rather trade them. And now, if you're the Lakers are in a situation where we're going to talk about shortly, where they made some signings, and okay, listen, off season's a long way away. We've seen stars traded. We've seen John Moran traded. Like I said, we just see like we're seeing our franchise players being traded, but it's the value, and you'll never get equal value. This is an example of what did Boston gain by essentially you're getting a guy in Paul George who's going to make $58 million. Jalen Brown, I think, was making the same amount, but is 6 years younger in his prime, and now the Sixers look good because of the fact that with Maxey and Edgecombe, and they add Dean Wade, and then you got Joel Embiid. That's what looks bad for Brad Stevens. That's what looks bad from a franchise perspective. It looks bad. And hopefully Boston can do something. Because if this is it, then could Paul George be great? Once again, I'll keep saying it. He's played 78 games over the last 2 seasons, whether suspension or injury. The last time he was an All Star when he was with the Clippers. He was a two-time All Star with the Clippers before coming to Philly. So 36. Are you really going to pay this man $58 million? The NBA, I'll tell you what. Go look at some of those contracts and you just go, wow. You just go, like Paul George is making that much? Yeah, he is. He's 36. I don't write the rules. But shifting gears, um, I do want to talk about before we go any further. Um, uh, listen to this episode, every episode of the Sports in the World podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Watch on the YouTube channel, Sports and the World YouTube channel. We have a Facebook page, which we're getting back active. I keep saying it, but you know, I wish if I was an octopus, I'd be in great shape. But so check us out on those platforms. Check me out on social media at LaDarius_Brown on Twitter and TikTok, LaDarius_Brown on Instagram. Be posting videos and clips. And let me know what you want this off season in terms of video thoughts on the off season. I'll be having clips from the show every week. Um, Noteworthy clips. And just like do little videos here and there if you want to as well. Had to get that out because I was going to forget about it. Now, staying with the NBA, let's talk about LeBron and his legacy. And Brian Windhorst summarized perfectly his legacy when he said, when your jersey to be retired or potentially be retired by every team you stepped on the court for, that's your legacy. And it's right. You may not, here's the thing I say about LeBron. You may not like the way his decisions go in terms of like we had like the decision. Remember that what ESPN did that? It was Jim Gray. Remember, like people didn't like that. Like he's grandstanding. And I'll tell you right now, LeBron James knows where he's going to go right now. But he is vetting out certain teams. He's making sure there's a place where, in for LeBron, I think it's about what does he want? Business? Does he want to compete for a championship, or is this pleasure? Listen, his legacy is set. Like this may, depending where he goes, like his jersey may not be retired, but he's going to have an impact. At his age, he's going to be 42, and what he did, what an NBA player to do what he did over the age of 40 is unprecedented. And whether you like him or not, just watch greatness. And this is very well be the last season we see LeBron James on the NBA court. So this is why this decision could be the final decision. And there's a lot of teams and a lot of options. Even Rich Paul gave some on a podcast. But I wrote down four for different reasons. Because I look at this from a business, pleasure, and one is personal. From a business perspective, the one team would make sense is the Golden State Warriors. It would make sense. You're out west. There's so much out there out west in terms of a business perspective. LeBron being a bit life after basketball, and you get to play with Steph. You get to play with Draymond. If you want to get Anthony Davis, okay. Like this, this could be potentially akin to a situation where remember the Lakers when they had got um, Gary Payton and that guy who played in Utah that forward. I'm not going to say his name. You know his name. We all know why I'm not going to say his name. But when they got together with him with Kobe and Shaq, four Hall of Famers, you could potentially have that in Golden State. So, but my problem is it's like you're out in West. And I think there's a couple of teams better. Because on paper, talent wise, but what or even their age matters. People are like, oh well, they could, the only thing that concerns me is that their health. How healthy? How many games are you going to get out of a lineup of Steph, potentially Steph, Draymond, LeBron, and Anthony Davis? Insert insert a player. Doesn't matter. Respectfully. To me, I worry about that is that how the durability. 82 games. Like, will they just win enough to just get to the playoffs or whatever? That's my concern. That's more business. If you want to go, you know what? I'm out west. Markability, boom, money, whatever. Now we start creeping into, do you want to win a championship? And I look at Minnesota and how good they are. Imagine adding LeBron to that team and playing with Anthony. Anthony could be interesting. Now, would he go to Minnesota? Minnesota's a great place. It's a great sports town, and they could use a veteran presence. There's no Julian, so I think Minnesota is very interesting to me. But if we're going to stay away from me personally, if you want to win a championship, if you're LeBron James, I'd steer clear of the West. I've heard Denver, and I'm like, as great as the Nikola Jokic and LeBron James played basketball together, I just think there are other teams that could potentially get in the way of that. And one of those teams is the a team that I really like, and I think is that if you want to win a championship, San Antonio. LeBron has respect for that organization. He had respect for Greg Popovich. You can make a case that San Antonio in the finals, they could have won the series 4 games to 1 had they not made fundamental mistakes because they're young. They're still a young team. Wimby and LeBron. You could throw in Julian Champagne. You could throw in that young core, and Dylan Harper. Like, that would be interesting to watch. If you're still winning a championship, San Antonio sounds pretty good. And the final team, this was a personal. Listen, I love a good story, and like Elton John, the lyrics is, if I can go back home again, Cleveland. Why not Cleveland? I just told you, Dean Wade's in Philly. There's a spot at the 4. I mean, you have why did I freeze on the name? You have Donovan Mitchell. You have Jared Allen. It'd be interesting to watch. Evan Mobley. You know, and listen, playoff Harden reared his head. As great as regular season playoff Harden is, playoff Harden's not it. And people are like, what about the money? Listen, in the NBA, I don't worry about the cap because they always somehow figure out a way to get it done. I looked at the cap today, and like only one team is in the plus. And there's how many teams in the NBA? So only one team is above water from a fiscal standpoint from the salary. Think about that. So my option, and like I said, in no particular order, but I in the order I said them, I said Golden State, Minnesota, uh, San Antonio, and Cleveland. Where do you like drop your thoughts on where he should go? Where should LeBron go? And I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about the upcoming weeks, but those are my thoughts on that. Now, to shift gears, sticking with basketball, let's get to the WNBA. All Star voting has completed, and we know that all the starters have been selected. And but it ties into a point I want to make about Caitlin Clark because I didn't get a chance to talk about it since you and I didn't get to talk about it 2 weeks ago. Now I want to show this is for the fan voting. That's the fan vote. We have, it's page one, Caitlin two, Aaliyah Boston three, Asia Wilson, Brown Stewart rounds out top five. So Caitlin Clark obviously is an all star. So the fan vote, you see, she's second. She was third in media. You know what it was with the player voting? She was number 11. And mind you, it's fair to report that like a little around half the players turned in their ballots because it's 50% fans and split between 25% between the media and the players. So it's still people are like, oh, I read the comments and I just go, listen. People want to make it about race, and then I point to Paige Beckers. I said, well, Paige Beckers, Brianna Stewart, ah, your case is not great. It's not about. Here's the thing. I think the players, in my opinion, they're one huge factor that the players low key resent Caitlin Clark's fans because the incident with her and Alyssa Thomas of the Mercury. Alyssa Thomas got death threats. This is not the first time her fan base has been threatening. I believe, to my knowledge, they went after Aaliyah Boston, and she is a teammate of Caitlin Clark. Like I've always said, I've said this multiple times. Caitlin Clark's fans are the type of fans who just started watching the WNBA the minute she was drafted. Their takes like, they're trying to blackball Caitlin. Is Caitlin the face of the league? You can make an argument, but the last time I checked, when you're Asia Wilson and you're a what 4-time MVP, Brianna Stewart, and the numbers are telling you that. Listen, 11 out of the play. Here's the thing, and it's like who got snubbed off this list. Listen, Angel Reese and like anybody from the Atlanta Dream, like Riley Howard, who I like, and Alicia Gray, they weren't all starters, but they're going to be on. I have great confidence they'll be reserves. It's just the fact they weren't starters interesting because to me, I think they're the team to beat. And listen, people say, oh, they struggle against bad teams. Listen, we've seen a lot where a lot of these upper tier teams struggle against the lower tier because the talent is that good on any given night. So the talent disbursement, where a top team could easily fall to a team who we consider not great, but there's talent. But shifting back to this whole narrative with Caitlin Clark is simply this. Her fans make it hard on her, and I don't think she helps her case a lot either, if we're just being honest. Because at the end of the day, to the very core, Caitlin Clark is an absolute talent. Like if you take off if you put on your unbiased cap and you go, yeah, she's great. The problem is that her fans make it really difficult. And this is what happens we see when fan bases for players. It's like they are who they are. And Caitlin Clark has to do a better job. Not say distancing herself, but these fans like listen. The fans are like I'm not surprised she finished second because the fans like Caitlin Clark. She has a steady fan base, but you can't use oh well the league is these players are being the fan Paige Becker. And when we start, I think I said this one of the earlier episodes a while back, and I said when there was a polling, more people like we'd rather build a team around Paige Becker than Caitlin Clark. And I don't care what you say, likability kind of matters. It's where you can't simply ignore the fact. This is where Caitlin Clark fans, if you were WNBA fans, if you can be a listen, I'm still a Seattle Storm fan. I love what we're doing. In some games, yeah, it's gonna be, but we're young. But you know what I say? That I can sit back and say, you know what? Caitlin Clark's a great basketball player. Hey, I can sit back and say that. Is that you can be a fan of a team or a player and also be objective about the league in its totality. Caitlin Clark fans see any sort of gripe toward Caitlin Clark as negative, and you just simply can't do that. Understand this: when someone tells you that Asia Wilson is better than Caitlin Clark, they're 100% correct because it's about the resume. People love to talk about Caitlin Clark, but it's a resume. Caitlin Clark may be the greatest college basketball player, male or female. This is the WNBA. It's a different beast. It's a different league. It's a different, it's a different set of standards. And at the end of the day, how essentially, I'm pretty sure percentage of them who went after Alyssa Thomas were her fans, and even Stephanie White, who I love as a head coach, top three head coach in the league. You can make a case, top five, definitely top, make a case for top three. She's out against this. What happened to Alyssa Thomas? Some of your fans have to chill. Is that if you think it's that serious, I guarantee you that it's not serious. I will give you half my check and tell you and bet that it's not that serious. Because it's not. Because at the end of the day, we're giving death threats. You could argue the league is much more physical than it first started 30 years ago, 30 seasons ago. So so the league has gotten physical. Am I justifying, do I feel no, what I'm telling you is that death threats crosses a very finite line. That's my point. Those death threats, it's one thing you may not like how Alyssa Thomas, how that situation went down, but for her to get death threats, go, go touch grass. You may say, oh, you're against Caitlin Clark fans. No, certain Caitlin Clark fans, I keep saying, they just watched the WNBA 2, 3 years ago. And all of a sudden, they're trying to tell a majority of us that we don't know ball. I write about it. There's a lot of people I know who write about it, cover it, and talk about it. And you have the nerve to go after them? No, they're being objective because they've seen how the league has changed. Caitlin Clark has shown up. Caitlin Clark is being built as the face. And these players are saying, no, we're great too. Am I justifying something? No. What I'm telling you is that her being 11th in player voting does not surprise me in the least because the fans love her and the media loves her. The players are listen. Fans prefer Angel Reese. They prefer Paige Beckers. They prefer Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart. That's something to think about. It's where maybe I'm not saying the players have a respect for one another, but for Caitlin Clark because everyone's trying to make Caitlin Clark to be like she's the savior of the league, and that's gonna piss some players off. Now, should it ever reach the escalation that it did when they would no, but it was her fans with the death threats. Alyssa Thomas, the net suspension, the threat she was getting was uncalled for. Uncalled for. Because at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is this people lie. Maybe your animal, your cat or dog might lie, but the numbers don't. She's top three in the fan and media vote and number 11 with the players. So imagine if only half of the league's players voted, that number imagine if 75% voted. That percentage could be even worse. I think some of the players not necessarily may resent Caitlin Clark, but they resent her fan base because they've done some outlandish things. Like I said, they would have Leah Boston. I'm like, they're the same team. What are we doing? Caitlin Clark is great. She's gonna be a star. At one point, when Asia Wilson hangs up those sneakers, we can talk about Caitlin Clark being the potentially next face of the league. When Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart defeats the Calder, when these all time greats decide to hang it up, we can have that conversation. But what we're not going to do right now is put her fans put her above all of them. That's what's comical. Some of them, I'm not saying all of her fans do it, but some of y'all do. Some if you're a fan of Caitlin Clark, I'm not saying you're one of them, but the death threats, situation with Aaliyah Boston, that's not helping her case, and the damn not helping y'all case. So let's understand the players have made it clear they prefer Angel Reese, Paige Becker. There's a reason you can't use race. Oh, the reason is what? Paige Becker. She finished in the top three in player, I believe, player, media, and fan votes. As you can see there, can't use race. When you have no cards to play, you have to make the cards up. You have to pull a who's line in. We have to improv. Caitlin Clark fans, like chill. And fans who were okay with any fan who was okay with those death threats against Lynn Thomas, you're not a fan. You don't have to like Alyssa Thomas. You don't even like the Phoenix Mercury. A death threat against a player, that's a line you shouldn't cross. Period. Speaking of line, we're gonna cross a new line before we get out of here today. Once again, thank you all joining me. Spending a little time on your Fourth of July weekend with me here on the Sports of the World podcast. I do want to talk a little wrestling. And listen, we just had Night of Champions in a place where WrestleMania is gonna be at next year. That's gonna be fun. But a lot of exciting things happened. Oba Femi became King of the Ring. Um, Great move. But then he said, you know what? He didn't pick. He didn't pick a. He didn't pick a. We're going to get Brock. We're going to get Oba at SummerSlam. Alyssa, and let me tell you something. We've all like for wrestling fans. We watched a lot of SummerSlams. Been a lot of great SummerSlam matches. This one, on the name alone in the card, it's going to be a. It's going to sell tickets. Brock Brock's going to fully hand the torch to Oba. And it's going to be great to watch. It's going to be great to watch. Um, we saw Io Sky become Queen of the Ring and face Liv Morgan, which is great. She's going to face her at SummerSlam. But I would like for the situation to be Rhea Ripley be addressed. And, like, is she coming back anytime soon? What's going to happen with the title of that? I'll leave it at that for another future date. And, of course, the bigger story is Sami Zayn being WWE champion. And a lot of mixed things. Listen, I feel like that belt is about finishing your story. Cody came back. He finished the story, winning the belt. Sammy's finishing his story. Now, will Sammy be champion? He'll be champion entering, or the question is, would he be champion entering SummerSlam? Let's hope so. Who's he gonna face? Because if we're getting Seth and Roman, I'm bouncing around everywhere because listen, Seth and Roman, that's a money match. And with SummerSlam being 2 nights, I could argue this is gonna main event potentially night two, but depending how the card looks, because it's still next month and a lot of things can shape out. And but the question is, who's Sammy gonna face? That's the question I have. And there's some ideas like, oh, it's gonna be over. Like, no, we're gonna say could Oba pull double duty? I don't know. I would love that. But let's enjoy Sami Zayn's run. Let's enjoy his story. He's a world champion. And whatever the beliefs are, like, oh, he won it because of this. Okay, Well, he won a championship. He finished his story. Great mid card guy. He did a great job as United States champion. He's been a tag team champion. Like, let him enjoy this to be the top of the company proverbially as a world champion. Let him enjoy it. And also, look, I'm watching with AEW and I'm liking it. Listen, Kenny Omega, MJF, sign me up. That's all I'm gonna say. Just sign me up for that. TNA, it's getting great. NXT, Nikki Blackheart. I'm saying NXT is a great place for wrestling, but for women's wrestling, that's why I say the women's division of WWE is going to be fine, and for the next generation and the generation after that, they're that good. So I want to get those quick points out because I don't want to take up all of your time. But friends and the future friends, that's this episode of the Sports in the World podcast. Like I said, like, listen, and subscribe. Drop a comment. Apple, Spotify, your thoughts on the show, this episode. Drop your questions for future episodes as well. I'll be sure to post more content, post clips from this episode. But until, friends and future friends, until I see you again, be real, be you, be blessed, and be safe from all of us here from the Sports and the World podcast.